it's spilt over to the Palestinians with the Hamas PFLP split. Yarmouk camp had an argument, and it's looking like leading towards an altercation between the future movement of Hariri in Lebanon and Hezbollah. And I can't say. I don't know if it's actually going to happen or not. I did want to say something about the Kurds, though. The PKK was actually under the Syrian government umbrella for a while. Öcalan had some, before he was captured by the Turks, he had Syria as his home. The Kurds were not the Kurdish movement, separatist movement or liberation movement, was least strong in Syria, and that's because Kurds enjoyed more equality and citizenship and power inside Syria as compared to how they had it in Turkey. But perhaps now, with this new PKK ceasefire with Turkey, it has reflected back on Syria, because the PKK is more now moved towards the FSA camp, and I think it's maybe they believe that it's whoever has the power to help them, that's usually the person that they support. Unfortunately, it's totally opportunistic.
So, what's the view on Russia? I'll call this the final question. Is Russia seen as the greatest ally in the world that will never let you down and stand behind you forever?
There are obviously limits to what extent a country would support another country, but the fact that Russia and Syria have very long strategic alliance, the fact that Russia, at the time of the Soviet Union, was Syria's greatest superpower patron, which saved Syria on numerous occasions, and the fact that Syria is Russia's last real ally in the region, considering the fact that Egypt, Libya, these traditional Arab countries are out of the equation. Syria has Russia's last naval base, which isn't necessarily an issue which would define geopolitical interest, but adds to the concept of Syria's depth to Russia. Syria ultimately gives Russia strategic depth, and Russia is not in the business of regime change. They would never allow a government to be taken out from power by Western military force, as happened in Libya and other countries. So Russia is setting a precedent for the new world order of how it should be, against intervening in states' internal sovereignties, against states using other states for perpetuating hegemonic interests. So Russia is essentially defending the UN Charter. It is essentially defending the sovereignty of states. What Russia is doing is saying to the world that we will not let you destroy Syria by arming the jihadists without any real cause. Russia will defend Syria until the very last step, because this is what the UN states. This is what Russia needs to do.
Do you think Russia will actually intervene militarily?
To define the concept of military intervention from a Russian perspective is difficult, because Russia supports the state, and the state in Syria has territorial integrity. I doubt the Syrian government would allow Russia to intervene militarily. However, Russia could send air support. Russia could send, in a military sense, experts to give Syria training on these weapons. Syria's greatest weapons are sophisticated air defense systems and an anti.
Talk of it getting S-300s.
S-300s. Also, Iran stated they want to enforce a new version of the S-300, which is domestically made. The Syrian S-300, which, if they possibly have it, will be a standard Russian one. However, Syria's other air defenses, such as the S-200, which has been upgraded, and the Pantsir air defense systems, are enough to defend Syria's airspace against any foreign aggressor, as shown with the downing of the Turkish aeroplane. Syria's anti-coastal Bastion system, which is also a very important cruise missile system, is also Russian-made. So Russia can provide Syria with weapons to protect their strategic and territorial integrity without giving them offensive weapons, which the West may seem as helping the government against a military crackdown.
With all this going on in Syria, the whole country's being turned inside out, and you also, no doubt, before this troubles, had your own paths in life. You were a student. I mean, how has it affected your professional life?
I've always been an activist ever since I was 15 years old. So for me, this is more like a culmination of everything I have been doing in the past. So what about you, Danny?
Of course, the field of international international relations has always been one which I have a defined interest in, and the fact that I can pursue that through speaking about the Syria issue, and it gives me more of an insight on how the world works, as we have a perfect example of a geopolitical, geostrategic struggle which has no real other empirical example in the whole of the contemporary world. Syria is gives the most unique version of events in the last possibly 50 years.
I'm afraid Israel wants it destroyed, and that's the bottom line.
Oh yes, of course. The fact that the Israelis have a major political interest in the region, and Syria has been a state which has supported the resistance movements and does not submit to Israeli hegemony, would make it a primary target for Western regime change.
Is the last bastion against Israel.
Yes, of course. Without Syria is the second Palestinian struggle in a sense. Without Syria, there is no real pan-Arab world. Syria is the last standing Arab state which has maintained its dignity and sovereignty.
You must be crying about what the Arab world has done to you.
Of course, especially with the Arab League. I mean, it's one of the most pathetic of organisations throughout recent history, and the fact that they would do this to Syria, a founding state, just shows how much the United States have these puppet states in their pockets.
Well, I think for me, and this might be an unpopular view, but in many ways Pan-Arabism is something of the past. I don't believe that the Arab states have as much vested interests inside the Palestinian struggle and in opposition to Israel as the Levantian areas, which are Syria, Lebanon, basically the areas which are directly affected by the imperialism and the Zionist ideology. So I think Gaddafi saw it that way as well, and he left the Arab League long before Syria did. And this is my humble opinion. Syria is the heart of resistance. We have been basically the biggest threat to Israel, I would say bigger than Iran, because Iran is a rival to the Israeli hegemony over the Middle East, but Syria has more reason to oppose Zionism, because the Zionist ideology is to control everything from the Nile to the Euphrates, which is going to encompass Syria. And I think this whole war is about breaking this, and I've said this many times, but it's about breaking the Syria-Iran alliance. And if they have to use sectarianism to do that across the Middle East, that's what they're doing. And that's why the Arab states are standing against Syria and Iran at the moment.
I'd like to thank you both for your time. It's been a big education.